20 years ago, my daughter vanished without a trace. No ransom note, no witnesses, just her red prom dress found torn beside the woods. The police said she was gone for good. I buried an empty coffin because they never found her body. But last night, my old phone, one I haven't touched in decades, lit up on its own. And there it was, a single unread message from her number. Mom, I'm so cold. If you've ever lost someone and still feel their presence, hit that like button or leave a comment below. I read every one of them. Now let me tell you how it all began. My name is Marissa Cole, and for 20 years I've lived in a house that hasn't known laughter. Every wall here remembers her, my daughter, Lena. She was 17, with long auburn hair that glowed like fire in the sunlight and a smile that made every room brighter. That smile is what I remember most. Not the last words she said, not the sound of the rain that night, just that smile disappearing as the car pulled away. It was the night of her senior prom, May 18th, 2005. I still remember standing on the porch, watching her twirl in that red dress I'd spent 3 months saving for. You look beautiful, I told her, my throat tight. She rolled her eyes in that teenage way, pretending not to care, but I saw it, the pride in her posture, the excitement trembling in her voice. She waved once, then got into her friend's silver Honda Civic. That was the last time I saw her alive. When the call came hours later, the phone nearly slipped from my hand. A deputy's voice, low and cautious. Mrs. Cole, there's been an incident near Forest Glen Road. We need you to come down. My husband, Daniel, was already halfway to the car before I could grab my coat. We thought it was a fender bender, maybe a flat tire. We were wrong. By the time we arrived, red and blue lights flickered against the dripping trees. The rain was relentless, pounding the asphalt like tiny fists. An officer led us to a ditch on the side of the road. There, half buried in mud, was Lena's corsage, white roses crushed and brown from the rain, and her phone, screen shattered. Her car door was open. There was no blood, no footprints, no sign of struggle, just emptiness. They searched for weeks, dogs, helicopters, volunteers combing through the woods. Her picture was everywhere. The news, missing posters taped to streetlights, milk cartons in grocery stores. Every time the phone rang, I prayed it was her. Every time it wasn't, I died a little more. At first, people cared. They brought casseroles, flowers, prayers. But sympathy has a shelf life. After a few months, they stopped calling. After a year, they stopped mentioning her at all. The police labelled it an unresolved disappearance. Daniel and I called it what it was, a nightmare with no waking up. He tried to move forward. I couldn't. He stopped sleeping in our bed, then stopped coming home altogether. By the second anniversary, he had moved out. You're obsessed, he told me once. You're talking to her like she's still here. I remember staring at him and whispering, she is. That was the last thing I said before he walked out the door. I kept her room exactly the same. The prom picture on the dresser, her favourite perfume on the nightstand, her jacket hanging by the window like she'd come back any second to grab it. I vacuumed around her shoes, dusted her trophies, made her bed every Sunday morning. My therapist said it was unhealthy, that I was stuck in denial. Maybe I was. But denial was easier than the truth, that my little girl had vanished into nothing. There were sightings, of course. A girl who looked like her at a gas station in Idaho, another near a diner in Montana. I chased every lead, every rumour. I drove through 3 states once just to find out the girl was a stranger with the same shade of hair. People called me crazy. Maybe they were right. But a mother doesn't give up until she has a body, or a miracle. I kept the same phone number, just in case. I never changed it, never cancelled her line. Every month I paid the bill. I told myself it was so the police could trace something if it ever came up. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted her to be able to reach me. Somehow, someday. Years turned into decades. The house grew quieter. My hair went grey. The world forgot her, but I couldn't. I stopped going out, stopped celebrating holidays. Every May 18th, I baked her favourite strawberry shortcake and set an extra plate on the table. I'd light a candle and whisper, "Come home, baby," just once. Then came last night. It was storming again, the kind of hard rain that feels personal, like the sky is trying to drown you. I couldn't sleep, so I went to the attic, where I kept all of Lena's things in boxes. I sat on the floor surrounded by photos, her old prom shoes, the tattered corsage in a plastic bag. And that's when I heard it, a faint vibration. At first I thought it was my imagination, or maybe a thunder rattle. But no, it was rhythmic, mechanical. I followed the sound to an old wooden box under the window. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was my ancient flip phone, the one I hadn't used since 2005. Its screen was cracked, the battery corroded, impossible to power on, or so I thought. But there it was, the display flickering weakly, lighting up my hands with a ghostly glow. And on the screen, one notification pulsed like a heartbeat. One new message, from Lena. I couldn't move. My throat tightened so hard it felt like I was suffocating. My fingers shook as I opened it. The message had only 5 words. "Mom, please don't let them find me." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the floor, the sound echoing through the attic like a scream. I picked it up again, but the screen had gone dark. No signal, no history, just black glass reflecting my own terrified face. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. Inside, my daughter had just texted me from 20 years in the past. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the attic floor with that dead phone in my hands until the sun came up, waiting for it to light up again, for something, anything, to prove I hadn't lost my mind. But it didn't. By dawn, the screen was cold, lifeless, like it had never worked at all. I made coffee I didn't drink. I kept glancing toward the attic door like it might start ringing again. Every rational thought I had told me it was impossible. The line should have been deactivated years ago, the phone battery corroded, the tower data long deleted. But the words kept echoing in my head. "Mom, please don't let them find me." Who was them? I opened my laptop and tried to recover the message history by connecting the SIM card to a reader. Nothing. The system didn't even recognize the chip. I checked the old number. It was no longer in service. According to the carrier, that line had been permanently closed in 2007. So how could she text me in 2025? I went to the sheriff's department. Sheriff Blake was new, too young to have worked Lena's case, but he'd heard of it. Everyone in this county had. He looked at me like a glass ornament he didn't want to drop. "Mrs. Cole, phones glitch. Messages sometimes resend from old backups. Happens more than you'd think." "From a line that's been dead for 18 years?" I asked, holding up the phone. He hesitated. Maybe it reactivated through a secondary signal? Or some scammer spoofing the number? "Then how do you explain this?" I turned the screen toward him. The message timestamp read 2:47 a.m., May 18th, 2025. The exact date and hour Lena had gone missing 20 years ago to the minute. He blinked, his professional calm cracking just a little. "Coincidences happen," he said, voice quieter now. "Mrs. Cole, I think you need rest." Rest. That word used to mean something. Now it felt like an insult. I drove home through the misty morning, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I parked in the driveway and sat there, staring at the house, unable to make myself go inside. Every window looked like an eye. Every shadow inside looked alive. When I finally stepped in, the first thing I noticed was the smell, wet earth, like the forest. There were muddy footprints on the hallway floor, small bare footprints leading from the front door toward the stairs. I followed them slowly, my pulse thundering in my ears. They stopped at Lena's bedroom door. The door was closed. It had been closed for 20 years. I kept the key in a small ceramic bowl in the kitchen, but now the door was unlocked, the knob cold to the touch. I pushed it open. The room was exactly the same, her posters, her bed, the stuffed bear on her pillow, but the window was wide open, curtains blowing inward with the wind. On the nightstand lay her photo, the one from prom night. Except this time, it wasn't the picture I remembered. In the photo, her red dress was torn at the hem, her eyes looked terrified, and behind her in the dark of the woods a shadow of someone taller loomed. My stomach twisted. I picked up the photo. It was printed on thick paper, still glossy, like it had just come out of a printer. The back was blank. That's when the phone in my pocket buzzed again. I froze. It wasn't the old phone this time. It was my current smartphone, the one I used every day. The screen showed unknown number. My hands trembled as I answered. Static. Then a faint voice. Mom? It was her. I knew that voice, every syllable of it. Lena, I whispered. I don't have much time, she said, voice cutting in and out. They found me again. Don't tell anyone. The call dropped. I tried to redial, but the phone flashed number not available. I scrolled to my recent calls, and the entry was gone. I felt dizzy. My body moved on its own, rushing downstairs, grabbing my car keys. I drove straight to the woods where they'd found her corsage 2 decades ago. The same stretch of road, still lonely, still haunted by rain. The sheriff's yellow tape had long faded, the trees had grown thicker, but the place hadn't changed. The ditch was still there, a shallow scar in the earth. I stood there, clutching my phone, praying it would ring again. It didn't. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something. Fresh tire tracks in the mud. Not from my car. I followed them a few yards down the trail until they ended at a tree marked with a faint white X. Beneath it, half buried in the dirt, was something metal. I knelt down and brushed the soil away. It was a camera. Old, broken, rusted, but when I pulled out the memory card, it was intact. I brought it home, cleaned it, and inserted it into my laptop. There were 12 photos, all from the same night, her prom night. The first few were typical, her smiling with friends, spinning in her dress, holding flowers. Then the last 3, blurry, frantic shots taken in darkness, a hand over the lens, a forest path, a man's boot, and the final one, her face, pale, frightened, half lit by flash. Behind her, in the black void of trees, a reflection of another face, not human. The screen flickered, then went black. I tried reopening the file, but it was gone. Every image, deleted. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. Mom, he's watching. I wanted to scream, to call the police again, but some instinct, something primal, told me not to. Whoever or whatever this was, it didn't want the police involved. And if Lena really was, wherever she was, maybe she was right. I locked every door, turned off the lights, and sat in her room with both phones on the nightstand. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m., then 2. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes again, it was 3:07 a.m., and the old phone was glowing. No ringtone this time, just that soft blue light pulsing. I picked it up, heart hammering. On the screen were new words. Mom, don't open the grave. Promise me. Before I could respond, a second message appeared beneath it, time-stamped the exact same second. Mom, open the grave, please. The 2 messages overlapped, flickering, alternating on the screen like they were fighting for control. That's when I heard it. 3 slow knocks from downstairs. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. Every sound in the house vanished, even the ticking of the old wall clock. I walked to the stairs, barefoot, my breath shallow. Through the window, the front porch light flickered. No one was there. But on the doormat, soaked by the rain, was a small white rose, crushed and brown around the edges, the same flower from Lena's corsage. By sunrise, I was no longer afraid, just consumed. Something had shifted inside me. The fear that had frozen me for 20 years had turned into a hunger I couldn't explain. I needed to know. I needed to find her. The rose from the doorstep sat in a glass of water on the kitchen counter. It hadn't wilted overnight. Instead, it seemed almost preserved, the petals still pale but unnervingly firm. I stared at it while sipping bitter coffee, my hands shaking so badly that the cup clinked against the table. My mind kept circling back to those messages. Don't open the grave, open the grave. Which one was real? Which one was her? Or was one of them something else pretending to be her? I decided to go back to the beginning, to reopen every lead, every memory, every lie the town told me. I started with the police reports. In the garage, I kept 4 cardboard boxes labelled Lena. Newspaper clippings, missing posters, witness statements, even psychic readings. I'd saved everything. Most people would call it obsession. I called it motherhood. The first box smelled of damp paper and old hope. I spread the files across the floor and read through every one like scripture. It all came back. The neighbour who swore she saw a red car following Lena that night. The anonymous tip that led nowhere. The abandoned cabin found weeks later with burned photos inside. One photo had survived the fire. Lena standing near the edge of the forest. Her reflection caught faintly in a puddle at her feet. But in that reflection, her face wasn't hers. The eyes were black voids. I told myself it was smoke damage, a trick of the fire. But that image stayed with me, pulsing in my mind like a heartbeat. By noon, I was driving again, heading toward Forest Glen Road. The same ditch. I parked and walked along the muddy shoulder, boots sinking into wet earth. The trees whispered overhead like they were gossiping about me. About a mile in, I found the white X again, the same tree where I'd unearthed that broken camera. The soil around it looked freshly disturbed. I knelt down and brushed away a thin layer of mud. And there it was, the lens cap from the camera, buried shallowly as if someone had left it there for me to find. When I stood, I noticed something else. Someone had carved words into the tree trunk, just beneath the X. 4 letters. Mom. The letters were fresh, the bark was still bleeding sap. I stumbled back, nearly falling. The air around me felt heavier, thicker, almost electric. I snapped a photo of the carving, but when I checked the image on my phone, the word didn't appear, just smooth bark. I ran. By the time I reached my car, my chest hurt from breathing. I slammed the door, locked it, and sat there shaking. The rational part of me whispered that it could have been a prank, kids messing around, the town's cruel joke on the crazy lady who never moved on. But deep down, I knew better. That tree was no prank. At home, I collapsed into the couch, exhausted. That's when I noticed the voicemail icon flashing on my current phone. I hadn't heard it ring. The message was 3 seconds long, static, a faint sob, and then, "He's still here." I felt the air leave my lungs. I played it again and again until the words blurred into white noise. He's still here. Who was he? The man in the photos? The one who followed her that night? I needed answers, so I reached out to the one person who'd never stopped believing me. Detective Harper, retired now, living 2 towns over. He'd worked Lena's case back then, the only one who ever looked me in the eye and said, "It doesn't add up." When he opened the door, he looked smaller, older, but his eyes were still sharp. "Marissa Cole," he said softly, like saying the name of a ghost. "You look like you've seen one." I told him everything. The texts, the calls, the photo, the tree. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening more with each word. After a long pause, he said, "Do you still have that phone?" "Yes." "Don't let anyone else touch it." He motioned for me to sit. "There's something I never told you," he said quietly. Back then, after the search was called off, a couple of us went through the woods again on our own time. Off the record, we found footprints leading deeper in, small ones your daughter's size, but there was another set beside them, barefoot, adult. My blood ran cold. They stopped near an old burial site, a forgotten one. Unmarked graves from before the town existed. We never found anything conclusive, so the department buried the report. They said it would feed hysteria. But I always wondered if she ended up there. "Buried?" I whispered. "Not exactly." He hesitated. That site had no coffins, just holes in the ground lined with wood. And symbols carved into the trees, religious, maybe pagan. The locals used to talk about rituals in those woods, ways to keep the dead from leaving. I gripped the armrest. "You think she was part of that?" "I think," he said, leaning closer, Whoever took her believed she could come back. That night I dreamt of Lena standing by that same tree, her red dress soaked through, hair plastered to her face. She was crying, whispering something I couldn't hear. When I stepped closer, she lifted her head, and her eyes were mine. I woke gasping. The old phone was glowing again on the nightstand. I picked it up with trembling hands. New message. "Mom, he's trying to dig me up." I bolted upright, heart slamming against my ribs. I dialed Harper. "You need to meet me at the cemetery," I said, breathless. "The cemetery?" "Yes. The one where we buried her memorial coffin." I drove through the night rain again, the wipers barely keeping up. The cemetery gates creaked open under the storm's weight. The caretaker's hut was dark. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to her grave. The beam of light swept across the wet grass, and I froze. The ground above her headstone was uneven, freshly turned. Someone had been digging. A shovel lay nearby, half buried in mud. I dropped to my knees, pressing my hand to the soil. It was warm. "Marissa!" a voice called behind me. Harper, soaked, panting, flashlight in hand. "Don't move!" But it was too late. My hand hit something under the dirt, smooth, cold, vibrating faintly. I clawed through the mud until I saw it, the old flip phone, glowing blue, just like before. It buzzed once, then stopped. The screen read, "Mom, I told you not to come." Then it went black. Behind me, Harper's light trembled. He whispered, "Marissa, look." I turned. On the other side of the grave, pressed against the fence in the shadows, was a man, tall, pale, eyes blank and shining like glass. He didn't move, he just watched. And then, as lightning cracked across the sky, he smiled. The storm swallowed the night whole. Rain hammered the ground, flattening the grass around the grave as I stared at the man beyond the fence. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there with that awful, knowing smile. Lightning flashed again, and for a split second I saw him clearly, his skin grey and thin as paper, his hair matted to his skull, and his hands, bare, caked with dirt, clutching the fence like something that had clawed its way out of the ground. "Who the hell?" Harper started, raising his flashlight, but the beam hit nothing. The space where the man had been was empty, only wet grass and shadows. I stumbled back, nearly slipping. "He was right there." "I saw him too," Harper said, his voice low and steady, though I could hear the tremor beneath it. "Come on, let's get out of this rain. We'll call for backup." But something in me refused to leave. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my feet dug deeper into the mud. "No. If someone was digging here, I need to know what they found." Harper sighed. "Marissa, help me," I said. "Just help me dig." He hesitated, then knelt beside me. The ground was softer than it should have been, the soil unnaturally warm, as if something had been buried there only hours ago. The shovel was heavy with water, its metal clanging each time it struck wood. Wood. We exchanged a look. "There's no coffin here," Harper whispered. "Just a box." We cleared more dirt. The box was small, maybe 3 feet long, old, weathered, bound with rusted hinges. When I pried the lid open, a wave of cold air hit my face. Inside wasn't a body, it was empty. Empty except for a single item, a silver flip phone, identical to mine. Its screen glowed faintly, casting a blue light against the wet wood. Harper cursed under his breath. "What the hell is this?" The phone vibrated once. A new message appeared. "He's watching you." I dropped it, heart racing. "Harper, this is the same number, the same one Lena used." "Are you sure?" "Yes, look." I reached for it, but the phone went dark again, as if it sensed me. Behind us, the rain suddenly stopped. No tapering, no fade, just silence. Even the thunder died mid-rumble. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then, somewhere behind the row of graves, I heard it. Knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Harper swung his flashlight toward the sound. The beam cut through the fog, landing on another headstone about 10 feet away. A wooden cross leaned against it, old and rotting. On the back, carved deep into the wood, was a name. Lena Cole. My knees gave out. "That's impossible," I whispered. "That's not her grave. Her coffin is here." Harper ran the light over the engraving. "There's no record of another plot with her name." I crawled closer, hands sinking into the mud. The ground below the cross looked freshly disturbed. "She's not here," I murmured. "She's never been here." "Marissa," Harper warned, "don't—" But I was already digging, clawing at the dirt with my bare hands. The soil was soft, almost loose, as if someone had just filled it in. My fingers hit something, fabric, cold and soaked. Then the stench hit. Harper grabbed my shoulders, trying to pull me back. "Stop! You don't know what's in there!" But I couldn't stop. I tore through the mud until I uncovered what looked like a piece of cloth. Red, faded, shredded at the seams. I knew that fabric. I'd bought it 20 years ago at a thrift store, turned it into her prom dress. I screamed. Harper dragged me away, but the ground where I'd been digging started to sink. The mud caved inward, the red cloth vanishing into darkness like a mouth swallowing itself. The earth groaned, wet and alive. Then came the sound, a phone ringing from below, a shrill, muffled tone. 1 ring, 2, 3, and then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I looked down, and through the thin layer of collapsing mud, something flickered, a small blue light, pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. Harper yanked me up. "We're leaving. Now." We stumbled back toward the car, our shoes sinking deep with every step. The flashlight's beam shook across the rows of headstones, catching names and dates that blurred together. But halfway to the gate, I heard another sound, a child's voice. "Mom?" I froze. Harper didn't. "Don't you dare," he said. "It's not her." The voice came again, clearer this time. "Mom, help me. I'm cold." I turned. The light from my flashlight landed on the far end of the cemetery. There, standing between 2 marble angels, was a girl in a red dress. Soaked, barefoot, her hair clinging to her face. "Lena," I whispered. She lifted her head. The face was hers, almost, but her eyes were too dark, too wide, reflecting no light at all. She took 1 step toward me, then another. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. When she opened her mouth, something black spilled from it, like smoke, thick and oily, curling upward before dissolving into the air. Harper stepped in front of me, hand on his gun. "Stay back!" The girl tilted her head. The black smoke poured faster, swirling around her body. The red of her dress deepened to something darker, wet, almost crimson. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. The smoke lingered, curling into a shape that looked like writing. For a moment, I thought I saw words forming in the air. "He's coming." We ran. Neither of us spoke until we were in the car, doors locked, headlights cutting through the rain. Harper's hands trembled on the wheel. "We're not going back there," he said. "Not tonight, maybe not ever." But as we drove away, my phone buzzed again. A photo message this time. It was the cemetery, my daughter's false grave. And in the photo, standing right beside the cross, was me. Except I hadn't taken it. I didn't remember driving home. I only remembered the sound of rain slamming against the windshield and Harper's silence beside me. The roads twisted through the forest like veins under pale skin, every turn familiar, every shadow whispering her name. When we finally pulled into my driveway, dawn was bleeding over the horizon. The house looked smaller, fragile somehow, like it knew something terrible had followed me home. Harper walked me to the porch. He looked like he wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, he muttered, "Lock your doors. I'll get a warrant to re-examine both graves." He hesitated. "And Marissa, if you get another message, don't answer. Not until I call you." But the moment he drove away, I knew I wouldn't wait. Inside, the house felt wrong. The air was cold, metallic. The rose on the counter, the one from my doorstep, had turned completely white overnight, its stem brittle and dry. The phones sat on the table where I'd left them, side by side like twin hearts. I reached for the old flip phone, praying for silence. It buzzed. One word appeared on the screen. Mom. My throat tightened. Lena? Then another line, slower, as if being typed letter by letter. He's gone. I can come home now. I stared at it until the letters blurred. I typed back with trembling fingers, "Where are you?" The reply came instantly. "At the house." Every sound in the world seemed to vanish in that second. I looked toward the hallway. The air moved, softly, deliberately, like someone had just walked past. I forced myself to stand, heart hammering against my ribs. "Lena?" My voice cracked. "Honey, if that's you, please, say something." Silence. Then a faint noise from upstairs. Wood creaking, floorboards sighing. Her room. I took the stairs slowly, one hand on the rail, each step heavier than the last. The door at the end of the hallway was half open, the same room I hadn't entered since the night before. The air inside smelled faintly of rain and lilac perfume, the one she used to steal from me. "Lena?" The curtains were moving, though the window was closed. Her bedspread was smooth, undisturbed, except for the indentation of a hand pressed into the pillow. Next to it lay a damp footprint, bare, small. I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. Behind me, my phone vibrated again. I looked down. A new text appeared. "Don't turn around." I froze. The room went quiet. No wind, no ticking clock, not even my own breath. I couldn't tell if the message was a warning or a threat. I closed my eyes, tears spilling over, and whispered, "Lena, what's happening to you?" The air behind me shifted, warmer now, close. I could feel someone there. A faint, shaking breath touched the back of my neck. And then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The lights flickered, the house groaned. My knees gave out and I fell to the floor, gasping. The phone clattered beside me, its screen still glowing. A new message appeared. "Come find me where it ended." The woods. By the time Harper called to check on me, I was already halfway down Forest Glen Road. "Marissa, stop," he shouted through the phone. "Do not go back there alone." "I don't have a choice," I said, gripping the steering wheel. "She needs me. Or something wants you to think that." But I'd stopped listening. The rain had started again, thick and heavy, blurring the windshield. The closer I got to the forest, the stronger the pull in my chest became, like a magnet drawing blood to iron. When I reached the old trail, I saw it immediately, the white X carved into the tree, the same spot where we'd found the camera. But now there was something new, a path of footprints leading deeper into the woods, glowing faintly in the dark. They were hers. I knew the shape by heart. I followed them, clutching my flashlight, calling her name. "Lena, it's Mom. Please, baby. Talk to me." The forest answered with silence. After a few minutes, I came upon a clearing I didn't remember. At its center was a massive oak tree, roots twisting above the ground like skeletal hands. And there, leaning against the trunk, was an old wooden door. Not attached to any house or wall, just a door standing alone in the dirt. Carved into the wood were 3 words, "Let her rest." My phone buzzed again. "I'm inside." I stepped closer. "Lena?" My voice barely left my throat. Something moved behind the door, a shadow shifting against the cracks of the wood, slow and deliberate. I reached out and touched the handle. It was warm. Behind me, twigs snapped. I turned, the flashlight beam slicing through the dark. Nothing, just trees and mist. But the air felt crowded, as if the woods were holding their breath again. I turned back to the door and pulled. The hinges screamed. The smell hit me first. Wet earth, rot, and something sweet underneath, like old flowers. My light flickered over the opening, revealing a narrow staircase descending into blackness. My phone lit up in my hand. "Come down, please." I took one step, then another. The air grew colder, thicker, humming faintly with static. The walls around me pulsed with moisture, alive with roots. The deeper I went, the louder a sound became, a rhythmic clicking, like an old phone vibrating on a wooden table. When I reached the bottom, the beam of my flashlight landed on something metallic. It was another flip phone, this one open, ringing softly on a stone altar. And beside it lay a set of bones wrapped in what remained of a red prom dress. The light trembled in my hand. My body refused to move. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The phone on the altar stopped ringing. Its screen flickered, then turned blue. "Don't cry, Mum." I backed away, shaking my head. "No, you're not her. You're not my daughter." "I've been here the whole time," the screen flashed. "He took me, but I never left." My own phone buzzed. Another message. "Get out. It's not me." Both phones were glowing now, one blue, one white, their light bouncing off the stone walls, clashing like fire and ice. I could feel something rising beneath the altar, the ground trembling. The bones shifted, scraping softly. Then, through the static hum, a low growl filled the air, deep, ancient, not human. I turned and ran, up the stairs, through the door, into the cold night rain. I didn't stop until I saw my car headlights glinting through the trees. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and gasped for air. My phone was still buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out, my fingers slippery with rain. One final message blinked across the screen. "He's not gone." A moment later, a reply appeared beneath it, one I hadn't typed. "Neither am I." And then, through the rain-streaked windshield, I saw her, standing at the edge of the forest, watching me. I sat in the car with the engine off and the wipers ticking a nervous metronome, watching the figure at the tree line refuse to dissolve with the rain. She didn't move, neither did I. When I finally blinked, she was gone, not like a trick of the eyes, but like a curtain dropped between us. The forest exhaled. My chest remembered how to breathe. I called Harper. He answered on the first ring. "Are you safe?" "I don't know," I said, "but I found something. Bones, a phone, a door underground." "Stay put," he said, and his voice turned from human to procedure. "Drop a pin. I'm on my way." I drove home instead. It wasn't logic. It was instinct, the same animal pull that had dragged me to the woods. The house looked like a stranger wearing a familiar face. I took off my shoes in the kitchen, and the tile shocked my feet with cold. The white rose in the glass had turned translucent, as if it were made of ice from the inside out. I reached for it without thinking. It crumbled into glittering frost at my touch. My current phone buzzed. "Harper. On porch. Open up." When I opened the door, he stepped in dripping and pale. He took one look at me, at the glass of crushed ice petals, and clicked into motion. Code off, notebook out, questions like triage. I told him everything as fast as I could and slower than I wanted. The door in the clearing, the stairs, the altar, the bones in the shred of red dress, the phones warring with different light. When I got to the voice that wasn't a voice, the growl, I saw a flinch run through his jaw. "Okay," he said finally. "We handle this like a case. No assumptions, no superstition, until evidence takes us there. Step 1, we go back." "Back?" Every part of me said no. "With backup," he said, "and daylight." But we didn't wait for daylight. We waited for Daniel. I hadn't called him. Harper had. He didn't ask permission. "He's her father," he said, when I stared at him like he'd betrayed me. "And you should not be out there without someone who knows your blood." An hour later, Daniel stood in my doorway, older in the ways that mattered and exactly the same in the ways I wished he wasn't. The careful hands, the eyes that scanned a room for exits, the grief he never learned to wear out loud. He hugged me like he used to hold a rescue rope, and I let him. For the first time in 20 years, it didn't feel like surrender. We went to the clearing together. The rain had thinned to a mist that clung to the skin and made every breath feel like drinking water. In daylight, the oak looked less like a sentinel and more like a scar the earth had learned to grow around. The freestanding door was still there, absurd as stage scenery in the middle of the woods. The words carved into it, "Let her rest," looked older than they had last night, the grooves filled with dark sap. Harper brushed his hand over the letters. "This cut is decades old," he said. "Which makes no sense because it's our daughter's name on a cross that didn't exist," Daniel finished, voice tight. We opened the door. The smell climbed out before we did. Damp stone, old dirt, something floral gone to rot. We went down with flashlights and a caution I wished were bravery. The stairs held. The room at the bottom was exactly as I'd left it. Stone, altar, the ruin of a dress, the phone. But in daylight, there were details I hadn't seen. Symbols carved into the walls, repeating in a loop that made the eye want to follow them forever. A series of rusted hooks near the ceiling. A ring of candle stubs fused to the floor by melted wax like a pale crown. Harper lifted his camera and started documenting. Daniel didn't move for a long time. He looked at the cloth instead, and his hands went out like he might reach for it and then remembered how touch can be a violation. "That was our fabric," he said, voice snapped thin. "You cut it on the kitchen table." I did the one thing I could do. I looked for what the room wanted me to see. It didn't keep the secret for long. On the far wall, beneath the repeating symbols, was a mark I'd noticed in passing and dismissed as water damage. In the light, it was a pattern, concentric circles with a tiny etched triangle at the center. Inside the triangle, a child's crude drawing of a phone. Children of the Dawn. I didn't know why the name arrived in my mind like a remembered cough until Harper said it out loud. "You remember the interviews?" he asked Daniel, eyes still on the symbol. "Back then, rumors about a group out in the hills, not a church, not a club. Something that called itself a family." Daniel shook his head. "Rumors," he said. "I didn't chase rumors. I chased my daughter." "I chased both," Harper said, and his mouth made a small, humorless smile. "And I hit walls." We split the room like we were assigned lanes. Harper catalogued. Daniel checked for structural danger. I went to the altar because every mother on earth knows how to stand at the place where offerings are demanded. The flip phone on the stone had gone dark, its hinge half open like a mouth frozen mid-word. I thumbed it. Nothing. Then I noticed what it was lying on. Paper gone soft with damp, folded once, then again. I lifted the phone and took the paper gently, using 2 fingers like I'd learned with old photographs. The fold released. Inside was a letter written in cramped, careful script, ink swallowed in places by time, but readable. "To the family of the one we keep, she is not gone. The body is only an anchor. The voice will follow the strongest thread. If you hear her, do not pull. If you pull, you will bring back more than the one you love." Below the words, a list like a recipe. Water, sunlight, a song she knew by heart, her true name spoken at the threshold. And then, beneath that, in a different hand and in pencil so faint I almost missed it, a single line. "If you love her, let her rest." I felt Daniel at my shoulder before I heard him. He read over me and I felt his breath leave. "A ritual," he said. "No judgment in it, just a diagnosis." "Or instructions to keep us from doing what we're going to do anyway," Harper said. He had moved closer without me noticing, camera down. "Who wrote it?" At the bottom, there was a name. Not a legal signature, not even a last name, just Abel, written with the shaky confidence of someone who believes a first name is enough when you think you're a prophet. The name rang a bell in Harper's memory. "We had an Abel on a list," he said slowly. "Back in 04, 05, Abel Crane, self-anointed pastor, no priors, no prince, disappeared after a fire out by the rail spur. Could never place him with Lena, could never place him with anyone, officially." I stared at the page until the letters blurred, then sharpened again. You learn to allow for two truths at once when grief takes up residence. The thing the world says is real, and the thing your bones insist on anyway. Here they braided, anchor, thread, do not pull, and then water, sunlight, song, name. He warned us, Daniel said, and his voice cracked on the US like a train wheel hitting a seam. He warned us because he knew we would pull. Or because he wanted us to, Harper said. The words were hard and necessary. Cult leaders don't leave mercy notes. They leave bait. A sound moved through the room like a pressure change. Not a voice, not a groan of earth. A soft, almost domestic noise. The flutter of paper in a draft where no draft should be. I turned. A small wooden box sat on a ledge I swear had been empty minutes ago. I don't know if I missed it or if I am done pretending the room was obeying physics I recognized. I opened the box. Inside, a Polaroid photograph sealed in a plastic sleeve, a brass ring with a chipped pink stone, and a cassette tape labeled in block letters, Sunday. The Polaroid was impossible before I pulled it out and more impossible after. In it, I stood in this very room, my hand on a younger version of Lena's shoulder. She wasn't the 17-year-old in the prom dress. She looked 20, maybe 21, hair a little shorter, eyes older in the way eyes get when they've understood something the body wishes it could forget. I was wearing the raincoat I had on this morning. Beneath the image, in smudged pen, a caption, "She came back. I tasted metal." "This is a trick," Daniel said, harsh, too fast. "It's a fake. It's a Polaroid," Harper said. "Harder to fake than anything from a phone, but that's not the point. The point is the message. Someone wants you to believe a story. The question is which version." The brass ring was Lena's. I didn't need the chip in the pink stone to tell me. It was the ring she bought with babysitting money and a swear she'd pay me back for the 20 I lent her. I pressed it into my palm until it hurt enough to feel like proof. The cassette tape took me a second to place. We didn't own a cassette player anymore, but the word on the label did its work. Sunday, the day we used to clean the house together. The day Lena insisted we play Motown through every room and sing wrong lyrics with right joy. Water, sunlight, song, name. "I think these are the keys," I said, half to myself, half to the universe that might be listening. "I think they're telling us how to pull the thread." "Even if they are," Harper said, careful, "we need to know what we're pulling." "Did you see the other line on that letter, about bringing back more?" "I saw it," I said. And I thought of the two messages that fought on the same screen, the voice that smelled like rot, the smile in the cemetery that had no mercy in it. I saw it. We took what the room would let us take. The letter, the ring, the tape, the Polaroid, the phone. Harper bagged them with the muscle memory of a man who still believed in chain of custody, even when the chain led back to a place where the law had no jurisdiction. As we climbed the stairs, the temperature shifted from cellar winter to spring rain, and I realized I had been holding my breath the entire time. Outside, the day had sharpened into one of those bright, cold afternoons that make the edges of things look too clean. Daniel helped me over a root, his hand strong around my wrist. It occurred to me that grief had made us strangers, and this strangeness was making us a small, temporary family again. Back at the house, we split the work. Harper called two people he trusted, one at the county clerk's office who owed him a favour, one at the university archives who could pull records faster than any normal human should. Daniel drove to the thrift store 2 towns over and found a cassette player that looked like it had already lived 3 lives and still had enough left for one more. I filled a glass with water and set it on Lena's dresser. I opened the curtains as far as they would go and let the pale winter sun climb into her room. Then I sat on the edge of her bed with the ring in my palm and the Polaroid on my knees and waited for the doorbell to ring with a delivery from the past. It came as a phone call first. Harper. "We found Crane," he said without preamble, or what passes for him on paper. He filed a permit in 2005 for weekly family gatherings on a 20-acre parcel off Railspur Road. He listed an emergency contact address under a church that never existed, And Marissa, he filed for a burial transit permit in May of that year, for remains never logged at the morgue. Lena, I said, voice breaking without asking permission. We can't say that, he said. Not yet, but he moved a body from one place to another without the law seeing it, and then he disappeared in a fire nobody called in. The symbol? I asked. The phone inside the triangle? He exhaled. Found it in an old zine the archives lady dug up, self-printed pamphlets from Crane's so-called sermons. He called the device the vessel and the voice the return. He preached that if you gave grief a channel, the dead could be taught to obey. He sold obedience like salvation. Water, sunlight, song, name, obedience. Daniel came back with the cassette player triumphantly ordinary in his hands. He set it on the dresser, plugged it in, and clicked the button. The tape wheels turned, and the room filled with dust and strings. It was Ain't No Mountain High Enough, not the original, but a version close enough to trick the heart. I laughed without meaning to. It sounded like choking. Daniel smiled with his eyes and not his mouth the way he used to when Lena sang into a hairbrush and demanded we be the backup. The old flip phone on the nightstand lit. Not a ring. A glow like something remembering itself. I poured the water into a fresh glass. I moved it to the exact spot where she used to keep her bedside tumbler when she was too lazy to walk to the kitchen. The sunlight shifted over the floor like a hand finding a cheek. The song spilled into the corners, working dust loose from the vents. Say her name, Daniel said, and he wasn't speaking to me alone. He was speaking to the room, to the rule, to the thing underground that had laid out its terms like a contract. I said it the way you say a prayer and the way you whisper into a newborn's hair. Lena Cole, I said. My girl, my daughter, come home. The flip phone brightened. The screen, dead and blue and stubborn for hours, blinked white. There was no message, only light. The air changed temperature without warning. Warmth unrolled across the bed like a blanket fresh from the dryer. The cassette tape hiccuped and then steadied, the singer's voice catching and then climbing at exactly the place Lena always laughed at. Marissa, Harper said softly from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. His eyes were on the Polaroid still in my hand. Look. The photo was changing, not rewinding, not dissolving, focusing. The me in the image sharpened, my raincoat acquiring the exact crease it had right now, where I'd jammed my hands in the pockets downstairs. The Lena in the photo blinked. I swear to God she blinked. And then, under our feet, something in the house answered with a long, low creak like a ship plank remembering the sea. The old phone pulsed again. Not a warning, not a threat, a heartbeat. Water, I said out loud, because saying the steps felt like building a bridge plank by plank. Sunlight. The winter sun slid a fraction higher, as if indulging me. Song. The tape clicked to the chorus that belonged so completely to our kitchen that I could see her in socks sliding through suds. Name, Daniel said, and he said it like a father who had learned love was a verb you do when there are no nouns left. Lena. The air above the bed flexed. Not like a ghost story, no cold spots, no rattle of chains. Like heat over asphalt, the kind that makes a highway shimmer in July. The shimmer thickened, threads of light slipping together, refusing and then agreeing like fingers learning to lace. A shape gathered. It didn't break the room. It didn't threaten. It arrived. And just as the shape coalesced into something that bore the outline of a girl stepping forward from against the window, the cassette clicked. The tape stopped. The room snapped back to plain. The phone went dark. A draft shouldered through the curtains like an unwelcome guest. On the nightstand, next to the glass of water, a single line of text bled onto the flip phone's dead screen as if written from behind the glass. Don't pull. Under it, letter by letter, fighting through, another line. Mum, please, just a little more. My chest filled with two tides at once. Harper's hand went to his holster out of reflex alone, as if he could draw on grief and make it stand down. Daniel moved to the cassette, slapping the player like an old TV. It whirred, started, and the room sighed into song again. I leaned into the light and the not light and spoke to both the living and the dead. "I'm not pulling," I said. "I'm opening. There's a difference." The old phone flashed once, like agreement or warning. And then the house answered with a new sound, footsteps on the porch, slow and unembarrassed by the hour. 3 knocks, deliberate, patient, not the rhythm of a stranger, the rhythm of someone who believed they already lived here. The 3 knocks echoed through the house like the closing of a heartbeat. I looked toward the front door, but none of us moved. Even the air felt braced, holding itself taut. "Stay here," Harper murmured, reaching for his gun. "No," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "If it's her, she won't come for you. She'll come for me." Daniel's hand brushed my shoulder. "Marissa, wait." But I was already walking down the hallway, the floor creaking beneath my bare feet. Each step made the knocks sound louder, closer, until I realized they weren't coming from the door anymore. They were coming from inside the house, from upstairs, from Lena's room. Harper swore under his breath and followed me halfway before the light above us flickered. A soft hum rolled through the ceiling, low, pulsing, electric. When I reached the doorway, I saw it. The old flip phone on her nightstand glowing brighter than I'd ever seen it, flooding the room in a pale, breathing light. The cassette player beside it had rewound on its own and was spinning soundlessly, tape wheels blurring. I crossed the threshold. The moment I did, the temperature changed. It wasn't cold or hot, just weightless, like stepping into the center of a memory. The sunlight pouring through the curtains turned silvery, shifting across the air in thin ribbons. The flip phone began to vibrate. The sound wasn't mechanical anymore, it was rhythmic, human, like a faint heartbeat. Daniel entered behind me, whispering, "Marissa, what is that?" "I think," I said slowly, "it's her." The light brightened. It spread outward, painting the walls in waves. Dust motes turned into sparks, floating upward like reverse rain. And then the shape began to form, thin strands weaving together, a soft outline, barely visible. A girl, barefoot, hair floating as if she stood underwater. "Lena?" I said. The shape flickered, stabilizing, and then she was there, translucent, radiant, and heartbreakingly young. My daughter, frozen in time. She smiled, small and hesitant, like she was afraid I'd vanish if she moved too fast. "Hi, Mom." My breath left me in a sob. "Sweetheart?" She glanced at Daniel and Harper standing behind me, her gaze soft but sad. "You shouldn't have come back here." "He's still near." "Who?" Harper asked quietly. Lena's expression darkened. "The man who called himself Father Abel. He thought he could make me eternal. He said the voice of the dead could live in wires, that the signal was the soul." Her eyes flickered toward the flip phone, still glowing like a captured star. "He used me to open the door." I swallowed hard. "The one in the woods." She nodded. "Every time you turned the phone on, it called to me. It called to us, the ones trapped between." Daniel took a step forward, voice shaking. "We just wanted to bring you home." "I know," she said softly. "But the thing that followed me back isn't me. It's what Abel made when he failed." Harper's voice was tight. "You're saying the man we saw, the one at the cemetery," she finished for him. "He isn't alive, not anymore. He's what happens when grief won't let go." Her words hung in the air, sinking deep. I reached for her, but my hand passed through, scattering her like smoke. "Lena, what can we do?" She looked toward the window, where sunlight was spilling in thicker now, golden, warm. "You can let me go." "No," my voice cracked. "You came back. You found me." "I was never lost, Mom. You were." The light around her pulsed brighter, expanding until it filled every corner of the room. The cassette player clicked, unpausing itself. The same song began to play, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, warped by time but recognizable, the lyrics trembling through static. She smiled. You remember, right? Sunday mornings? I nodded, tears sliding down my face. You used to dance in your socks. You'd make your dad sing the wrong verse just to laugh at him. Lena giggled softly, and for a moment, just one fleeting, perfect moment, it was as if the years had reversed. The sound filled the room, light and alive. Then her expression changed. The glow around her dimmed, rippling like candlelight in a breeze. He's coming. Harper tensed. Who? The answer came not from her, but from the hallway below. 3 knocks again, harder this time, rattling the walls. I spun toward the door, heart hammering. Lena's voice rose above the music, sharp now. Don't open it! But it was too late. The knocks became pounding. The front door burst open, slamming against the wall. Cold air swept through the house, and with it, a voice, hoarse, guttural, wrong. Marissa! Daniel grabbed my arm, pulling me back as Harper aimed his gun down the stairs. Stay behind me! From below came the sound of footsteps, slow, wet, dragging. I could smell it now. Earth, mildew, and the sweet rot of lilies left too long on a grave. Then silence. Harper took a cautious step down the stairs. Show yourself. The reply came from everywhere at once, a distorted voice overlapping itself, rising and falling like radio interference. You pulled the thread. You opened the door. A shape appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Not the man from the cemetery anymore. This thing was worse. Skin grey and stretched thin, eyes like wet glass. Its mouth opened, and a hiss of static filled the air. Every light in the house flickered. Lena screamed. He's not supposed to be here, Harper fired. The bullet passed through the thing's chest like smoke. The creature didn't bleed. It didn't even flinch. It turned its head toward me, those eyes reflecting the pale glow from the phone upstairs. Give her back, it croaked. The old flip phone on the nightstand began to vibrate violently, rattling across the table. The screen flashed white, then blue, then white again. The light from Lena's form dimmed with each pulse. Mom, she cried. He's taking it. He's taking the light. I didn't think. I acted. I grabbed the phone. The moment I touched it, the creature roared. Every window in the house shattered at once, shards flying inward like glass rain. The song on the cassette warped and slowed until the voice on it wasn't singing anymore. It was screaming. I clutched the phone to my chest, shouting over the noise. You can't have her! Lena's light flared one last time, brighter than the sun, engulfing the room in pure white. I felt the world tilt, the air rush out of me, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was on the floor. The storm was gone. The sky outside glowed faintly pink with dawn. Harper was crouched nearby, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Daniel lay beside him, coughing but alive. The creature was gone. So was Lena. The phone in my hand was dark and silent. The cassette player was melted, the tape fused in its reel. On the nightstand, the glass of water was gone, but in its place, a single drop of condensation shimmered in the light. Harper's voice broke the silence. She stopped it, he said. Whatever it was, she stopped it. Daniel leaned against the wall, his face streaked with dirt and tears. Did she? I looked out the window. The morning light was warmer than it had been in years, golden and soft. On the horizon, a faint shimmer rose from the treetops, like heat haze or a spirit exhaling. She's free, I whispered. For the first time in 2 decades, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt empty, and that was almost the same as peace. But as I turned away from the window, I saw something that made my breath catch. On the wall, where the sunlight hit just right, a reflection danced in the shape of a girl spinning in a red dress, laughing soundlessly before fading into the light. For 3 days, the house stayed silent. No knocks, no lights flickering, No whispers rising from the attic or static bleeding through my phone. Just silence, the kind that doesn't feel safe, but necessary. Daniel stayed. Harper came and went, always leaving behind a new folder, a new theory, a new attempt to make sense of what we'd seen. They ran tests on the melted cassette, on the ash in Lena's room, even on the soil from the gravesite. The report said what I already knew: nothing supernatural, nothing provable, just residue, organic compounds, corrosion, electrical interference, words meant to make chaos sound like data. But I didn't need proof. I had memory. Every morning I woke early, opened the curtains, and let the light pour into her room. It didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt like a promise kept. The air carried that faint scent of lilac again, the one she'd loved. Sometimes when the breeze passed through the window just right, I could swear I heard a laugh. Brief, weightless, familiar. Daniel never asked me to explain what I believed happened that night. He didn't have to. We'd shared too many versions of Lena, alive, lost, returned, gone again. Now, we existed in quiet orbit around the same truth. She had finally crossed somewhere we couldn't follow, and somehow that had to be enough. One afternoon, Harper stopped by with a small envelope in his hand. "We're closing the case," he said, sounding more relieved than he wanted to. "There's nothing left to pursue. The figure, the bones, the cult, all of it, it's beyond jurisdiction. Whatever this was, it's finished." He paused before handing me the envelope. "But there's something you should have." Inside was the Polaroid we'd found in the underground chamber. I hadn't seen it since the night the house exploded in light. Only now, the image had changed again. The picture no longer showed me standing beside Lena in that room of stone. The background was gone. The walls had vanished. It was just the two of us, standing in sunlight, hand in hand. My breath hitched. "How?" Harper shook his head. "We don't know. It was sealed in an evidence bag that never opened. Maybe light exposure, maybe damage." But we both knew better. He started to leave, then turned back. "Marissa," he said quietly, "not everything that defies reason is meant to be feared. Sometimes it's just mercy taking a strange shape." After he left, I sat on the porch, Polaroid trembling in my hands. The late spring air was warm. Birds sang. The world had the audacity to be ordinary again. I watched sunlight creep across the yard until it reached my bare feet. That's when I noticed the phone lying beside me on the step. The old flip phone, the one that should have been dead. I hadn't touched it since that night. The casing was cracked, the hinge broken, but the screen flickered once in the corner, like a pulse too faint to die. I opened it. Nothing. Then, slowly, letters appeared, one by one, as though drawn by an invisible hand. "Thank you for listening." Tears blurred the words before I could finish reading them. "It's beautiful here. I can see the sun." And then, "I'm warm now." The phone dimmed, and when I blinked the tears away, the screen was blank. The light was gone for good this time. I didn't cry. Not the way I had all those years before. The grief that used to roar inside me had softened into something gentler, a tide that still moved, but no longer drowned me. I whispered into the empty air, "Goodbye, baby." A soft breeze passed through the porch. It smelled like rain and lilac. Weeks passed. Life crept back in small, unglamorous ways. I started teaching again, volunteering at the local library, reading to children on Tuesday mornings. Sometimes I'd see a girl with red hair laugh too loudly and feel my chest tighten, but it wasn't pain anymore. It was memory, reshaped into grace. Daniel moved into a small house 2 streets over. We weren't married again, but we were something closer than estranged. 2 people who shared a scar and decided to let it breathe. On Sundays, he'd bring breakfast and fix things around the house that didn't need fixing, and I'd let him. Some habits are kinder than explanations. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I found the wooden box that had once held Lena's keepsakes. Everything was still there: the corsage, The letter from the cult's chamber, the broken cassette, the melted phone. But under the pile of dust and time, I discovered something I didn't remember ever owning. An old music box carved with a sun and a crescent moon. When I turned the handle, it played a faint melody. Ain't no mountain high enough, tinny and soft, the same song. The sound filled the attic, echoing off the beams. For a second, I thought I heard a second voice humming along, a harmony just beyond hearing. And in that moment, I understood. She wasn't gone. Not exactly. She was woven into the air, into the static, into the little signals between one world and the next. She'd found her light. I smiled through the tears that finally came. I'm proud of you, I whispered. The music box slowed, the last note fading into silence. A year later, I started writing. Not a journal this time, not a report for the police or a plea to the universe. A story, her story. I called it The Girl Who Called Home. People online said it was just a legend, a ghost tale to pass around message boards. Others said it was proof that grief can make the mind see anything it wants to see. Maybe they were right. But every time someone wrote to me saying the story gave them hope or made them call their mothers, I felt something like peace. One night, I posted the final entry. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and sat by the window, watching the stars blink in and out of the clouds. That's when I heard it again, faint, almost imagined. A vibration against the table, the phone. The screen flickered once, not bright, not frightening, just enough to make me look. There were no words this time, only a small white glow pulsing like a heartbeat. I smiled. "Good night, sweetheart," I said. "You can rest now." The glow faded. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of spring through the open window. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel the weight of absence pressing against me. I felt her everywhere, in the air, in the light, in the quiet miracle of still being here. Because maybe death isn't the end of the story. Maybe it's just the moment the voice on the other end finally says, "I'm home." If this story touched you, take a moment before you scroll away. Leave a comment below. Tell me who you thought of while listening. Your words mean more than you know. And if you've ever lost someone, I hope this story reminds you that love doesn't vanish. It simply changes its shape. Sometimes it reaches us in ways we can't explain. So share this with someone who might need that reminder today. And remember, even after the darkest night, there's always a voice waiting in the light.